Good evening, and welcome back to the Wednesday Alternative at the Metropolitan Virtual Playhouse. We've had much to celebrate recently with the arrival of spring, not to mention spring weather, and the proverbial lamb-like departure of March. And tomorrow we usher in the month of April, which brings along with it a nationwide month-long celebration of poetry. Tonight, to begin this celebration, we have an excellent lineup of poets for an evening of poetry entitled Metropolitan in Meter. Since we at Metropolitan are dedicated to understanding our country's present by illuminating its past, our poets tonight will build bridges between their own work and that of American poets throughout history. Please help me welcome Tina Kelly, Michael T. Young, Susanna Rich, Paul Nash, and Denise Leneve for Metropolitan in Meter.
Hello, I'm Michael T. Young. The first poem I would like to recite for you is Claude McKay's If We Must Die. McKay wrote the poem in 1919 in response to the race riots that took place during what is called the Red Summer. These were riots started by white racists in response to black veterans of World War I expanding their freedoms by seeking employment and housing in what were considered traditionally white communities. McKay at the time worked on the railroad and encountered violent white mobs at various stops. If We Must Die is his response to this situation, and it's a call to be courageous in confronting the injustice of systemic racism. And it's the same systemic racism we're battling today. If we must die. If we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in an inglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our accursed lot. If we must die, oh let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us, though dead. O kinsmen, we must meet the common foe. Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave, and for their 1,000 blows deal one death blow. What though before us lies the open grave? Like men we'll face the murderous cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying, but fighting back. The poem of mine that I would like to recite for you is called Reading Langston Hughes, and it was originally published in a journal called Lunch Ticket. In 2017, I spent time reading Hughes' articles from the Chicago Defender, and I kept noticing echoes between his time and ours. My poem is an attempt to confront systemic racism, but from the perspective of the problem of white privilege. Reading Langston Hughes. I'm on a bus, reading Langston Hughes articles from the Chicago Defender, and I realize it's like I have no shadow. I'm on a bus, sitting where I want to, and in this article, it's 1946, and Hughes is in a restaurant, and the hostess insists on seating him at the back of an empty room in the farthest corner by the kitchen door. It's 2017, and I'm reading Hughes writing in 1947, how a young athlete dies because there are no Negro hospitals, and every white hospital turns him away. And I realize the American dream is a river that rushes on, but still hasn't met up with its promises. In 1962, Hughes writes how Dr. Jane Wright of NYU's Medical Center goes to visit a friend at a fashionable apartment and is directed to the service elevator. Today it's 2017, and NPR publishes an article about African American women who are assumed by whites to be the help, though they own the business. So it's 2017, or it's 1943, and Hughes is helping me to understand or to stand under the weight of these relentless denials. I'm on a bus, and it's 1943, and Hughes is telling me the riots have started, and white shop owners in Harlem don't understand why their windows are broken, and I'm growing weary and want to close the book. I'm thinking, I can close the book, and the book ends. But Hughes couldn't. Those women on NPR can't. For him, for them, the book doesn't end. They, like him, are never allowed to leave its covers. The book covers them. And when I get off the bus, it closes over them. But the story doesn't end. I can ignore the story, though it doesn't end. And that is a kind of power. A power that could end it, if I help write that part of the story that ends it. The part where we all get off the bus, where we all close the book, and we all live outside its covers. Thank you.
I am Susanna Rich. 2020 was the centennial of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, recognizing by law the right of United States women to vote. We are still battling to ensure that all United States citizens can vote safely and with respect. Today, I'm going to read Aunt Chloe's Politics, written by Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who lived during the turbulent battles for universal suffrage from the 19th century until 1911, her death. She was a prominent poet, abolitionist, and activist. Aunt Chloe's Politics. Of course, I don't know very much about these politics, but I think that some who run 'em do mighty ugly tricks. I've seen 'em honeyfugle around and talk so awful sweet that you think them full of kindness as an egg is full of meat. Now, I don't believe in looking honest people in the face and saying when they're doing wrong that I haven't sold my race. When we want to school our children, if the money isn't there, whether black or white have took it, the loss we all must share. And this buying up each other is something worse than mean. Though I think a heap of voting, I go for voting clean. I wrote Shout, Poetry for Suffrage, a book of poems and dialogues from the points of view of the giants fighting for suffrage. Here is a poem from my sequel book now, Poetry for Equal Rights. I am Shirley Anita Hill Chisholm, 1924 to 2005. I want to be remembered as a woman who was a catalyst for change. You don't make progress by standing on the sidelines. On January 25, 1972, a warm winter day with the blessing of small rain, I announce that I am candidate for the Democratic nomination for the presidency of the United States. We are at the Concord Baptist Church in Brooklyn, New York. Concord, to bring the U.S., us together. Baptist for purification and for beginnings, and church for our inalienable rights under God. I am not the candidate of Black America. I am not the candidate of the women's movement. I am the candidate of the people of America. Unbossed and unbought. I am the first Black American woman to be elected to the United States Congress. I served 7 terms, although I am burdened with the double handicap of being both Black and female. In my candidacy for president, I am barred from television debates and permitted only one televised speech. And the male Congressional Black Caucus is contentious about my candidacy. But if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. LBJ signs the Voting Rights Act of 1965, but we still wait up to 12 hours to register to vote. And we suffer bodily harm and fabricated charges designed to land us in jail if we attempt to vote. So follow me, Fighting Shirley on the Chisholm Trail. I run to win, although I know I cannot win. I run so that in time a Black woman will win. Here in this Concord Baptist Church, I raise my right index and middle finger. In peace and in the V for victory, the index finger pointing the way to a godly future, the middle, as it has been since ancient times, for warning and power.
Hi, my name is Tina Kelly. I'd like to read a poem by Gina Ford called Lines for a Hard Time, and it appeared in Poetry Magazine in 1967 regarding the Vietnam War. Lines for a Hard Time. Evil does not go always by dark ways. On any hot summer day, clean shaven, it may stride across a public place and head purposefully for high vantage points. What whisper hisses in the inner ear? Take cover. Ah, and then the boy is dead, others dead or dying, and the evil laps out from bits of hot lead across the nerve pools of the nation. We are sick in our littered streets and high places. Worms twist in our labyrinthine skulls. We are frightened by bland facades. The losses are always personal. A phone rings. A father becomes less than the sum of his grief. Could we say better than his own words, and we will die as well, spiral upward into all love. And I'd like to read a poem of my own called A National Monument Crosses Over. Forget about it, Mother of Exiles muttered, rolling 30-inch eyes, dropped her torch, hiked her skirts, stepped over to Jersey. With her stride, 3 hours to Niagara Falls, Canadian side. Seydou Mohammed had a rougher trip, in a 10-hour slog north from North Dakota, in snow waist high, frostbite took his fingers. He feared deportation from Minnesota to Ghana, where, because he loves both men and women, they'd kill him. Thin gloves. God blessed Canada with good people, he said, refugee from the land of the free, land I once loved. So it's no wonder Liberty Enlightening the World, her full name, could no longer bear the inscription asking for homeless and poor masses. She turned her francophone sneer and her back to hypocrisy, headed up Belleville Avenue, past Persephone, over the Poconos, across the southern tier, into the embrace of the wise Justin Trudeau, who tweets love and diversity is our strength, hashtag welcome to Canada. We have more Sikhs in our cabinet than India does. We don't do sweeps. An empty granite pedestal in Upper New York Bay. Since when are we the people others must escape? Thank you.
September 1, 1939, by W. H. Auden. I sit in one of the dives on 52nd Street, uncertain and afraid, as the clever hopes expire of a low, dishonest decade. Waves of anger and fear circulate over the bright and darkened lands of the earth, obsessing our private lives. The unmentionable odor of death offends the September night. Accurate scholarship can unearth the whole offense from Luther until now that has driven a culture mad, and what occurred at Linz, that huge imago made psychopathetic God, and I and the public know what all school children learn. Those to whom evil is done do evil in return. Exiled, Thucydides knew that a speech can say about democracy and what dictators do. The elderly rubbish they talk to an apathetic grave. Analyzed all in his book, the enlightenment driven away, the habit-forming pain, mismanagement and grief. We must suffer them all again. Into this neutral air where blind skyscrapers use their full height to proclaim the strength of collective man, each language pours its vain, competitive excuse. But who can live for long in a euphoric dream? Out of the mirror they stare, imperialism's face and the international wrong. Faces along the bar cling to their average day. The lights must never go out. The music must always play. All the conventions conspire to make this fort assume the furniture of home, lest we should see where we are, lost in a haunted wood, children afraid of the night, who have never been happy or good. The windiest militant trash important persons shout is not so crude as our wish. What Mad Nijinsky wrote about Diaghilev is true of the normal heart. For the error bred in the bone of each woman and each man craves that it cannot have. Not universal love, but to be loved alone. From the conservative dark into the ethical, the dense commuters come, repeating their morning vow, I will be true to the wife. I'll concentrate more on my work. And helpless governors wake to resume their compulsory game. Who can release them now? Who can reach the deaf? Who can speak for the dumb? All I have is a voice to undo the folded lie, the romantic lie in the brain, of the central man in the street and the lie of authority whose buildings grope the sky. There is no such thing as the state, and no one exists alone. Hunger allows no choice to the citizen or the police. We must love one another or die. Defenseless under the night, our world in stupor lies, yet dotted everywhere. Ironic points of light flash out wherever the just exchange their messages. May I, composed like them, of eros and of dust, beleaguered by the same negation and despair, show an affirming flame. The next piece is Monsters, Monsoons, and Radon Slippers from the Angry Red Planet, a piece by Paul Nash and Denise Lennev. In 1938-39, as war was breaking out in Europe, Americans sought to escape from the effects of the Great Depression and events in other parts of the world. An unusual and destructive hurricane on the East Coast, coupled with severe drought in the Midwest, were harbingers of the great storm brewing overseas. At this time, Enrico Fermi was exploring the arcane mysteries of nuclear fission that would lead to the development of the atom bomb. Ironically, avenues of escape in music, radio, and film reflected the very realities they sought to block from consciousness. 1. The Fury's eye storms north
to a lounge
Latin beat as the Long Island Express derails big band rhythm.
Homes madly dashed to bits, oak trees hurled like toothpicks.
The Atlantic flung skyward to salt Vermont windows.
The torrents of autumn plunge across New England,
Nailing the sky to the earth, then suddenly
are gone.
2. Prometheus's disciple wanders far from his homeland, searching an uncharted forest, seeking the four elements.
New force arises from embers, sparks ignite eternal flame, like a child's birth in bright future,
Like a blinding solar flare. Fermi cannot know the danger or grasp the power unleashed.
As Pandora's conflagrant box burns deeply to the earth's core.
3. The god of war beckons as broadcast invaders rocket down to Grover's Mill.
Stirring well-founded fears. There's something in the air, and Carter's liver pills
Don't really do very much for us or the Martians, who catch the common cold, conveniently die, and thus leave Vienna, Prague, and Warsaw for others.
4. Tornadic rage rips her farmhouse from its moorings in the earth.
Displaced so far from the Dust Bowl, over celluloid rainbow,
To a land of ruby slippers, glittering jewel cities, and polychromatic horses.
it's easy to forget life in a bleak, pestilent Kansas of rust-colored Martian soil.
An exodus of lost farmers travels a yellow brick road that winds through lush fields of poppies,
Dreaming of no place like home. Thank you.
Please join me in once again thanking Tina Kelly, Michael T. Young, Susanna Rich, Paul Nash, and Denise Leneve for their contributions to our poetry celebration. We hope this inspires you to find ways of celebrating poetry in your own lives and spheres this month. We look forward to seeing you this Saturday night at 8 for our production of Edward Peoples' The Girl, wherein two suitors duel to win a belle's hand and each gets more and less than he bargained for. As always, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your continued support of the Metropolitan Playhouse. Until Saturday, be well, stay safe, and do continue to love one another. Have a great evening.